Hello everyone, welcome back to the course of Shakespearean Studies. This is the fifth lecture in the series, and this lecture is on King Lear by William Shakespeare. Power is the prize, but power shall be damned by lies. Fate loves the fool. 3 daughters, 2 liars, a king grown old, but not wise. King Lear of a brilliance, becoming so influential as to affect profoundly the course of Western literature and culture ever after. Shakespeare authored King Lear around 1605 between Othello and Macbeth. It is usually ranked with Hamlet as one of the Shakespeare greatest plays. The setting of King Lear is as far removed from Shakespeare time as the setting of any of his other plays, dramatizing events from 18th century BC, but the parallel story of Lear's and Gloucester's sufferings at the hands of their own children reflect anxieties that would have been close to home for Shakespeare audience. One possible event that may have influenced this play is a lawsuit that occurred not long before King Lear was written, in which the eldest of 3 sisters tried to have her elderly father, Sir Brian Annesley, declared insane, so that she could take control of his property. Annesley's youngest daughter, Cordelia, successfully defended her father against her sisters. Another event that Shakespeare and his audience would have been familiar with is the case of William Allen, a mayor of London who was treated very poorly by his 3 daughters after dividing his wealth among them. Not least among relevant development was the then recent transfer of power from Elizabeth I to James I, which occurred in 1603. Elizabeth had produced no male heir, and the anxiety about who her successor would be was fueled by fears that a dynastic struggle along the lines of 15th century Wars of the Roses might ensue. Elizabethan England was an extremely hierarchical society, demanding that absolute deference be paid and respect be shown not only to the wealthy and powerful, but also to the parents and the elderly. King Lear demonstrates how at risk parents and noblemen are to the destruction of dishonest children, and thus how fragile the fabric of Elizabethan society actually was. Let me talk about the plot overview. King Lear, the aging king of Britain, decides to step down from the throne and divide his kingdom evenly among his 3 daughters. First, however, he puts his daughters through a test, asking each to tell him how much she loves him. Goneril and Regan, Lear's older daughters, give their father flattering answers, but Cordelia, Lear's youngest and favorite daughter, remains silent, saying that she has no words to describe how much she loves her father. Lear flies into a rage and disowns Cordelia. The King of France, who has courted Cordelia, says that he still wants to marry her even without her land, and she accompanies him to France without her father's blessings. Lear quickly learns that he made a bad decision. Goneril and Regan swiftly begins to undermine the little authority that Lear still holds. Unable to believe that his beloved daughters are betraying him, Lear slowly goes insane. He flees his daughters' houses to wander on a heath during a great thunderstorm, accompanied by his fool and by Kent, a loyal nobleman in disguise. Meanwhile, an elderly nobleman named Gloucester also experiences family problems. His illegitimate son Edmund tricks him into believing that his legitimate son Edgar is trying to kill him. Fleeing the manhunt that his father set for him, Edgar disguises himself as a crazy beggar and calls himself Poor Tom. Like Lear, he heads out onto the hill, When the loyal Gloucester realizes that Lear's daughters have turned against their father, he decides to help Lear in spite of the danger. Regan and her husband, Cornwall, discover him helping Lear, accuse him of treason, blind him, and turn him out to wander the countryside. He ends up being led by his disguised son, Edgar, toward the city of Dover, where Lear has also been brought. In Dover, a French army lands as a part of an invasion led by Cordelia in an effort to save her father. Edmund apparently becomes romantically entangled with both Goneril and Regan, whose husband Albany is increasingly sympathetic to Lear's cause. Goneril and Edmund conspire to kill Albany. The despairing Gloucester tries to commit suicide, but Edgar saves him by pulling the strange trick of leading him off the imaginary cliff. Meanwhile, the English troops reach Dover, and the English, led by Edmund, defeat the Cordelia-led French. Lear and Cordelia are captured. In the climatic scene, Edgar fights with and kills Edmund. We learn of the death of Gloucester. Goneril poisons Regan out of jealousy over Edmund, and then kills herself when her treason is revealed to Albany. Edmund's betrayal of Cordelia leads to her needless execution in prison, and Lear finally dies out of grief at Cordelia's passing. Albany, Edgar, and the elderly Kent are left to take care of the country under a cloud of sorrow and regret. Let's talk about the themes of the play, and let's know what themes are. Themes are the fundamental and often universal ideas explored in a literary work. The first theme of this play is justice. King Lear is a brutal play, filled with human cruelty and awful, seemingly meaningless disasters. The play's successions of terrible events raises an obvious question for the characters, namely, whether there is any possibility of justice in the world, or whether the world is fundamentally indifferent or even hostile to humankind. Various characters offer their opinions. As flies to wanton boys, are we to the gods? They kill us for their sport, Gloucester muses, realizing it foolish for humankind to assume that the natural world works in parallel with socially or morally convenient notions of justice. Edgar, on the other hand, insists that the gods are just, believing that individuals get what they deserve. But in the end, we are left with only a terrifying uncertainty. Although the wicked die, the good die along with them, finishing in the awful image of Lear cradling Cordelia's body in his arms. There is goodness in the world of the play, but there is also madness and death, and it is difficult to tell which triumphs in the end. Another theme of this play is authority versus chaos. King Lear is about political authority as much as it is about a family dynamics. Lear is not only a father but also a king, and when he gives away his authority to unworthy and evil Goneril and Regan, he delivers not only himself and his family but all Britain into chaos and cruelty. As the two wicked sisters indulge their appetite for power and Edmund begins his own rise, the kingdom descends into civil strife. And we realize that Lear has destroyed not only his own authority, but all authority in Britain. The stable hierarchical order that Lear initially represents falls apart, and disorder overcomes the kingdom. The failure of authority in the face of chaos recurs in Lear's wandering on the heat during the storm. Witnessing the powerful forces of the natural world, Lear comes to understand that he, like the rest of humankind, is insignificant in the world. This realization proves much more important than the realization of his loss of political control, as it compels him to reprioritize his values and become humble and caring. With this newfound understanding of himself, Lear hopes to be able to confront the chaos in the political realm as well. Reconciliation is another theme of the play. Darkness and unhappiness pervade King Lear, and the devastating Act 5 represent one of the most tragic endings in all of the literature. Nevertheless, the play presents the central relationship between Lear and Cordelia as a dramatic embodiment of true self-sacrificing love. Rather than despising Lear for banishing her, Cordelia remains devoted, even from far, and eventually brings an army from a foreign country to rescue him from his tormentors. Lear, meanwhile, learns a tremendously cruel lesson in humility and eventually reaches the point where he can reunite joyfully with Cordelia and experience the balm of her forgiving love. Lear's recognitions of the error of his ways is an ingredient vital to reconciliation with Cordelia. Not because Cordelia feels wronged by him, but because he has understood the sincerity and depth of her love for him. His maturing enables him to bring Cordelia back into his good graces, and a testament to love's ability to flourish, even if only fleetingly amid the horror and chaos that overwhelm the rest of the play. Motifs in the play. First of all, let me tell you what motifs are. So the definition to motifs are recurring structures, contrasts, and literary devices that can help to develop and inform the text's major themes. Madness is one of the motifs in the play. Insanity occupies a central place in the play and is associated with both disorder and hidden wisdom. The fool, who offers Lear insight in early sections of the play, offers his counsel in a seemingly mad babble. Later, when Lear himself goes mad, the turmoil in his mind mirrors the chaos that has descended upon his kingdom. At the same time, however, it also provides him with important wisdom by reducing him to his bare humanity, stripped of all royal pretensions. Lear thus learns humanity. He is joined in his real madness by Edgar's artificial insanity, which also contains bits of wisdom for the king. Meanwhile, Edgar's time as a supposedly insane beggar hardens him and prepares him to defeat Edmund at the end of the play. Betrayal is another motive in King Lear. Betrayals play a critical role in the play and show the workings of wickedness in both the familial and political realms. Here, brothers betray brothers, and children betray father. Goneril and Regan's betrayal of Lear raises them to power in Britain, where Edmund, who has betrayed both Edgar and Gloucester, joins them. However, the play suggests that the betrayers inevitably turn on one another, showing how Goneril and Regan fall out when they both become attracted to Edmund, and how their jealousies of one another ultimately lead to a mutual destruction. Additionally, it is important to remember that the entire play is set in motion by Lear's blind, foolish betrayal of Cordelia's love for him, which reinforces that at the heart of every betrayal lies a twisted set of values. Symbols. Let's talk about the symbols in King Lear. First of all, let me talk about what symbol means. Symbols are objects, characters, figures, or colors used to represent abstract ideas or concepts. The storm is a symbol in King Lear. As Lear wanders about an isolated hill in Act 3, a terrible storm, strongly but ambiguously symbolic, rages overhead. In part, the storm echoes Lear's inner turmoil and mounting madness. It is a physical, turbulent, natural reflection of Lear's internal confusion. At the same time, the storm embodies the awesome power of nature, which forces the powerless king to recognize his own mortality and human weakness, and to cultivate a sense of humility for the first time. The storm may also symbolize some kind of divine justice, as if nature itself is angry about the events in the play. Finally, the atmospheric chaos also symbolizes the political confusion that has overcome Lear's Britain. Blindness is another symbol in the play. Gloucester, physical blindness, symbolizes the metaphorical blindness that grips both Gloucester and the play's other father figure, Lear. The parallels between the two men are clear. Both have loyal children, disloyal children, both are blind to the truth, and both end up banishing the loyal children and making the wicked ones their heirs. Only when Gloucester has lost the use of his eyes and Lear has gone mad does each realize his tremendous error. It is appropriate that the play brings them together near Dover in Act 6 to sympathize about how their blindness to the truth about their children has cost them dearly. On this slide, let me analyze the characters for you. First of all, King Lear. Lear's world falls apart because he trusts himself too much. He thinks he can manipulate events, tell who loves him, and staking even after setting his throne aside. He is proud and full of power at the start of the play, but he crumbles into doubt and eventually madness. The entire play follows Lear down from the throne and into exile. From there, he withstands a storm, despair, and growing fear. Lear dies at the end of the play. Edmund, another character in the play. Edmund schemes, first to displace his brother, Edgar, and then to betray his father. He lies and manipulates. He has affairs with both Regan and Goneril. When he is charged with treason in Act 5, he fights an anonymous challenger who is seeking to prove Edmund's guilt through trial by combat. This unknown knight turns out to be his brother Edgar, who kills Edmund. Edgar is another character in the play. Edgar starts the play quite naive, and is still quickly taken in by his brother's schemes. Once he's banished, he disguises himself as a poor Tom, a crazy beggar, to stay in the kingdom. He cares for his father, showing his loyalty. Edgar guides his father through a suicide attempt, lying to him as Gloucester leaps from what he thinks are the cliffs of Dover. Edgar rises in the sight throughout the play, killing the treacherous Goneril's servant Oswald and his own traitorous brother Edmund. In the play's final line, Edgar is made joint ruler of the kingdom. Another character of the play is Earl of Gloucester. Gloucester is an older nobleman within the Lear's kingdom. He is quite loyal to Lear and at the time stands in for him. Gloucester has two sons, Edgar, his older and legitimate son, and Edmund, who is illegitimate. Gloucester is deceived by Edmund's betrayal of Edgar, and he banishes his elder son. Gloucester remains loyal to Lear throughout, and the Duke of Cornwall punishes him for his loyalty by squeezing his eyes out. Gloucester wants to kill himself due to his despair, and he asks someone he thinks is a poor beggar to guide him to the cliffs of Dover. Gloucester dies at the end of the play. Cordelia is another character in the play. When Lear divides his kingdom in Act 1, Scene 1, Cordelia refuses to pay her assigned role and declare how much she loves her father. As a result, he strips her of her portion. Only the King of France is willing to marry her without a grant, a fact that shapes her fate and Britain's. She is absent throughout most of the first three acts, then returns to Britain late in the play, bringing French forces with her. In the final battle, the rebel forces capture her. Edmund arranges for her to be put to death, and she's hanged in Act 5. Because of her steadfast loyalty to her father, she is a saintly figure throughout King Lear. Goneril is another character. Goneril is a classic villain. She embodies this by lying to her father about how much she loves him and by acting to erode Lear's authority and possession. She is married to the Duke of Albany, but as she rebels against her father and seeks power, her relationship with her husband deteriorates until the two of them actively loathe one another. She begins an affair with Edmund. When he is killed, she poisons her sister Regan and stabs herself. Regan is another character in the play. Like Goneril, Regan is another classic villain. At the beginning of the play, she makes public declaration of intense love for her father. But she follows this by finding ways to undermine his authority. She and Goneril turns their father out to wander in a storm. Regan suggests that her husband, the Duke of Cornwall, blind Gloucester for his treachery. When a servant tries to prevent this, she picks up a sword and kills him. Like Goneril, she begins an affair with Edmund and dies after he is killed, when Goneril poisons her. Let me analyze the plot for you. King Lear is a play about blindness. Blindness to others' motivations. Blindness to one's own true nature. Blindness to the emptiness of power and privilege. And blindness to the importance of selfless love. Lear's only desire is to enjoy a comfortable, carefree old age. But he fails to see the role his absolute power has played in shaping his relationship with his daughters, whom he expects to take care of him. Once he loses his power, Lear gains insight into his own nature and realizes his shortcomings, admitting, "Mine eyes are not owed best." Tragically, this self-knowledge comes too late, at a point when Lear has forfeited the power that might have enabled him to change his fate. He finally sees the world as it really is, but is powerless to do anything about it. He dies after saying the final words, "Look there, look there," a literal command that the others look at Cordelia, but also a symbolic plea that the survivors see themselves and the world more accurately. The play's end involves the death of many characters, most of them violent. Edgar kills his brother Edmund. Edgar also unintentionally kills his father, who is overcome by the discovery that his son has survived and forgives him. Edgar is restored to power as the new Duke of Gloucester. But like Edmund, he had to destroy his family to do it. Lear's family is also destroyed. Regan, Goneril, Cordelia, and finally Lear himself all die. The center of the conclusion is Cordelia's death. Even though Edmund reverses his order to have Cordelia and Lear killed, his decision comes too late. This truth echoes the fatalisms of the entire play. A mistake once made can't be undone, just as Lear can't undo his fatal mistakes of giving the wrong daughters his kingdom. In the play's final scenes, Lear carries Cordelia's body on stage, breathtaking with grief. Lear has finally learned to love his daughter without asking for anything in return, only to have her taken from him. All their suffering has been for nothing. Let me give you some assignment in the end. Question 1. Write in your own words the interpretations of King Lear. Question 2. Does the themes, motifs, and symbols of King Lear still be found in the 21st century? And that is how we come to the end of this short lecture. Talk to you next week. Bye for now.